What is the most important part of map voting? Is it selecting the map, the faction, or the battle group? A lot of times you hear people picking their favorite map and the faction they prefer with little regard to what the battle group is capable of, which is probably the most important thing to be voting on. That is the battle group, and there's little to no information outside of the map voting screen to be able to educate players, especially new ones, on the differences in the battle groups. So in this video, I'm going to break down battle groups or units in a consolidated way, giving you ideas of what maps you should play them on, what their specialty is, what their capability is, so you can make more informed decisions when voting. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you want more breakdowns like this to improve match quality. Down in the comments below, let me know the worst mismatch you've seen in terms of maps and battle group selection. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can hit the join button and become a member. You can also use my code SLATE3K30 for 30% off Squad for you or a friend. So if you're new, it might be helpful to really quickly define what battle groups or units are. Basically, every faction is broken down into a unit with specialties. That affects your vehicle lineup and typically fob emplacements. So while you are voting, you are selecting more than just a map and a faction. You're actually selecting what that faction shows up as. And outside of the voting screen, there's not really a ton of education in game to help you prepare for what you should vote on. So let's break down the 8 different battle groups in Squad. And bear in mind that most of my breakdowns are going to be referring to these battle groups in the context of Random Advanced and Secure and Advanced and Secure. First, we have the Air Assault Battle Group, a unit focused on high mobility with helicopters and light vehicles. It's going to have an extra helicopter, extra ATGM per fob, extra hat rolls, extra mortar, and a fast heli respawn. But its drawbacks will include a long main battle tank timer and limited IFVs and APCs. This unit will be strong on rollout to get infantry spread out across the map, but it's going to be weaker later in game as AA, ATGMs, or IFVs take position to help counter the helicopters. But this could be a useful unit on maps that are difficult to traverse for vehicles like Lashkar or Scorpo. Next, we have the Armored Unit. This unit is going to lean on an extra main battle tank or mobile gun system for superiority. It's going to have strong firepower with its extra main battle tank or MGS. But in drawbacks, you're going to have less mobility, less support vehicles, or at least less variety, and no helicopters. The Armored Battle Group may be weaker on rollout just due to mobility, but you're going to be stronger in the mid to late game because of armor superiority. This faction will likely thrive on maps like Talio or Yehirivka with long open sightlines. The most balanced battle group is going to be the Combined Arms unit. It's considered the jack of all trades without a specific specialty. You have the expected variety of vehicles, but nothing that gives this faction a specific strength. So this can typically be a solid choice, but it needs to take advantage of what they have and should avoid going head to head against opponents with a core strength. So you have to weigh the map choice and what the other team may be utilizing that has a core strength, because the Combined Arms unit can still get overpowered by armor, mobility, or firepower. And when it comes to maps, it's almost about selecting what maps you might not want to put Combined Arms on because you're worried that the other team may be selecting something that will overpower Combined Arms. For example, I'm not going to put Combined Arms on Talil when I think the enemy team may select the Armored unit. But I may select Combined Arms on Mutaha or Fallujah, where there could be a variety of choices for the enemy team to have to select. So instead of forcing us into a specialty that may limit what we can do, I try to find something that provides balance for the whole team. Let's talk about the Light Infantry unit. They're going to be a very mobile group with a variety of light vehicles. So with that high mobility, you'll have extra tow vehicles, an extra ATGM per fob, extra hat rolls, and extra mortars. But you're going to have a longer tank spawn timer, and you're going to be limited when it comes to heavier vehicles like IFVs or APCs. This battle group could be strong at rollout with mobility and speed to spread out infantry, but could struggle later due to the lack of armor. Light infantry can excel at maps with really good concealment. Think Manikugan or Harju, where you can spread out your infantry, hide those hat rolls, and get them in position to apply pressure to the enemy armor and your opponent's supply lines. The Mechanized battle group is going to have several different icons that are faction dependent and specific to their vehicle lineup. Typically, this unit is going to lean on tracked, heavily armored IFVs and APCs, but sometimes they'll be wheeled IFVs. So while they have heavy vehicles and pretty strong firepower, they are going to have some drawbacks and less mobility. Tracked Logis, which typically slows down logistics, longer main battle tank timer, and a longer heli timer. This unit may be weaker on rollout just due to mobility, but strong mid to late game because of the armor availability it possesses. This unit will typically thrive on maps with smoother terrain. Think Gorodok or Goose Bay with some nice sightlines, plenty of concealment, but not too limiting on mobility. Now, the Motorized battle group might have the most icons, again, dependent on the faction and the capability with the lineup of vehicles they have. This unit's going to focus primarily on wheeled IFVs for better mobility and speed over something like the Mechanized units. So they're going to balance good mobility, good firepower, but with a little less armor, and they're going to have a longer MBT timer and longer heli timer. This is going to be a really strong unit for rollout with the mobility and that firepower, especially if you're incorporating Mechanized infantry. but it can become a ticket sink later, especially going against heavy armor. This unit can be pretty effective in urban areas because of its speed, think something like Narva, but it can also be really helpful on maps that are a little bit more spread out, like Black Coast. The support battle group is an interesting one. It's going to lean on logistics support, fob building, and mobile artillery. They are going to have an extra ATGM per fob, an extra logistics vehicle, and one extra HAB per fob, but they won't have a main battle tank, and they'll be limited to no IFVs available. In rounds, this is a highly defensive unit that utilizes logistics movement and requires accurate intel and emplacement usage. I think it's rare that the support battle group fits in random advanced and secure or advanced and secure. It's typically better suited for the defensive team on invasion rounds. Now, I could see it working on maps like Al-Bazr, especially if you're sort of defending the urban areas or the airfield. I could also see it working on Black Coast, especially if you're going to be defending Torpedo or maybe setting up near train station with all those buildings to hide the HABs. But it is very easy for this unit to get overmatched. Now let's talk about Amphibious Assault. The key component of this is that obviously they are an amphibious unit, but they're limited to specific invasion layers as only the attacking team. So they do have amphibious vehicles and a variety of APCs and IFVs, but they often lack greater mobility because you are relying on APCs and IFVs, and that can tend to slow down the progression later in rounds. For example, playing as USMC on Harju can get a little bit slow in the longer parts of the round because you are relying on AAVPs. But largely this faction is less about suggested maps as it just becomes available on certain maps as an opportunity to play during invasion. Now some key differences that we've highlighted here are the difference between firepower and mobility. So by using combined arms as the middle ground, you can see the spread of the other units across this scale from firepower to mobility. But what this can also represent is greater survivability to less survivability. So while you have greater firepower in armored and mechanized units, you're also going to have greater survivability but less mobility. Whereas at the opposite end of the scale with light infantry and air assault, you're going to have less firepower, more mobility, but the trade-off is less survivability. Now I can also attach example maps across this scale. That is tied into where you want that firepower, that greater survivability versus where you really need mobility. So instead of heavy tracked vehicles, you need those light vehicles or helicopters to help you traverse the map. Now, obviously with map voting, each person is limited in what they can control in terms of what the team is actually voting on. But it's important for players, especially new players, to understand the basic capabilities of battle groups to better inform their voting. Because otherwise you get caught up in these really bad mismatches. For example, imagine Talil Outskirts is selected, and your team just jumps at the idea of having an air assault unit, let's say the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Now, outside of some of the support vehicles, you're going to have a BRDM, 2 Tech Hornets, a BM-21, a T-64 on a 30-minute delay, and 3 helicopters for a ton of mobility. So at the start, this could be really solid because maybe you can spread out your infantry with the hangars and get some ATGM set up pretty early. But the enemy team has selected an armor unit in the form of the PLA Armored Battle Group. Right off the rip, they're going to have 1 tank available and a ZSD 8925mm. And they're going to have both their tanks available 20 minutes before the Air Assault Battle Group has their only tank available. Now, the mismatch that's created here isn't just about the battle groups and their vehicles. That is very important, but it also goes back to the map. This is a wide open map. It benefits armor play because they can sit further back, pick off those ATGMs or logistics vehicles, which will cut down on your ammo supply, meaning your hats and ATGMs become ineffective at some point. Not to mention, it's not incredibly difficult to shoot down a helicopter here and there that's hovering a little bit too long over those hangars. So while air assault might start fast, armor has a really good chance of making up time in the end. They don't even have to push the objectives if they're able just to pick off enough vehicles to compensate for maybe not capturing 1 or 2 flags on the initial rollout. Now that doesn't mean that air assault can't win. It just means that there is a lot of room for error. This requires good coordination, good planning at the forefront of the round to be able to understand what you need to do in the mid round to not fall behind. And the reason there's a lot of room for error is just because they're at opposite ends of the scale from mobility to firepower. And Talil very much favors one side of that scale. Now let's look at this a little bit differently. Let's say the map selected was Lashkar and you again pick the AFU Air Assault. This map fits more into what the Air Assault unit does because it's going to be harder to traverse. The only area here on Lashkar that's pretty easy to traverse is the middle lane. Now, you don't necessarily want to go head to head with an armored battle group, but the beauty here is that with the air assault group, you can still get the infantry out pretty quickly and hopefully get an ATGM set up, or more importantly, your hat kits out in the field early. Because of the terrain, the tracked vehicles are going to have to use more pathing, making their routes a little bit more predictable at times. Infantry will have a little bit more concealment and be able to use height to their advantage. Helicopters have a little bit more cover behind some of those hills. And in many instances, you start to compress the space that armor can work within. If you get those hat kits in the right position, you can start to surround armor with lats and hats, making their day miserable, which is typically way more difficult in the wide open desert of Talil. Now, of course, this doesn't mean the armor battle group can't win. It's just that Lashkar tends to favor mobility on the opposite end of the scale, so there's a lot of room for error for the armored battle group. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's just not enough information in game currently to explain battle groups, so my hope is that with this video, players and new players especially can understand more about the battle groups, their specialties, what they're good at, and what they're not good at, to better inform the unit voting portion of map voting. To go a step further, if you want some education outside of game, I'm going to link a document down below. This is provided by Offworld. It discusses all the vehicles in each battle group, so you have a better idea of what to expect, along with timers and any special things that those battle groups get. It's actually what I used to create this video. It's worth noting that not every faction has every battle group, and the sheet will break all that down for you. It's also worth mentioning that Offworld has relaxed biome restrictions and alliance restrictions in recent updates. Now, small maps will typically have a version of combined arms suited for smaller maps, and server owners can of course curate some of the voting experience, so that could limit some of the options you have available. Now, with all that said, I think I've covered some of the basics around battle groups and unit selection to give you a better understanding of when to vote on certain units based on the map selected. There's just not much education on this in the game, so hopefully this can be really helpful for new players. So if you enjoy videos like this, hit the subscribe button, consider joining as a member on YouTube down below. And let me know down in the comments if there's any other helpful tutorials I should consider making. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Battlegroups,